There's a few different things that happened that kind of opened my eyes to, something's going on here.
Former Mar-A-Lago employee Brian Butler, also known as Trump employee number 5, recently sat down with CNN's Caitlin Collins to tell her what it was like to help the former president hide classified documents. Butler was a 20-year Mar-A-Lago employee who handled the car service for the former president. He told Collins that he and Trump co-defendant Walt Nauta were tasked with loading bankers' boxes onto Trump's plane at the same time that the FBI was searching a storage area at the resort for classified documents that was, again, going from Mar-a-Lago to Bedminster, New Jersey. Collins then went on to ask if Butler had any idea what was even in the boxes that he was loading onto this plane.
No, I had no clue. I mean, we were just taking them out of the Escalade, piling them up. I remember they were all stacked on top of each other, and then we're lifting them up to the pilots.
How many boxes was it?
They asked me in the interview, and I believe it was 10 to 15 is what I remember. I know
being
it was
the investigators.
Correct.
And when you look back on that now, what do you...
Well, I had no clue until probably the end of June. There was a few different things that happened that kind of opened my eyes to, something's going on here.
So you get that unusual request. Did you ever think to yourself, why were there so many boxes at Mar-a-Lago?
For me, I'm just thinking, the former president, he has a lot of stuff he likes to lug around with him. I never would have thought it was anything like what we see now.
Classified documents.
I mean, who could imagine that a former president would want to steal a bunch of classified material from the White House to do God knows what with it? I know, right? And generally, this wouldn't cross people's minds. So I don't blame him for not, for not coming to that conclusion, for not knowing. And by the way, not asking. I mean, he's an employee. He's not going to put these two things together. Because, again, they asked him, did you think something was going on? And he's like, no, not really. I mean, it's president. He's probably got a lot of stuff. It's not my business, right? But then, around June, seeing some of the other reports, started to put 2 and 2 together, and he's like, oh no. Oh no! Well, did I just help my boss hide classified documents? Oh no. And again, when you think about it, it's a pretty normal guy reaction because, hey, my boss wants to move me to move some boxes to help out, whatever. I'm not going to ask questions. I'm going to go in, I'm going to do my job, right? Whatever. I don't think my boss is doing a crime, but I'm not going to ask. But 3 months later, after the FBI search, Butler did leave his job, in part because of a desire to move on. Gee, I wonder why. I wouldn't want to work there either. But again, he worked for Trump for like 20 years. And then after all these reports started coming out, he's like, I might have been working for a criminal the whole time. I got to get out of here. I got to go. I'm gone. And furthermore, when asked why he decided to speak out now, Butler called the past year a quote-unquote roller coaster and said that he hoped by going public, at least I can move on with my life and get over this. Instead of just waiting for it to come out, I think it's better that I get to at least say what happened then it coming out in the news. People calling me like crazy, he said. So now look, he's going to get a lot of attention. He's already getting a lot of attention, obviously. Donald Trump might have a few things to say. I could imagine it being, you're a coffee guy. Barely knew him. Of course, right? But this could end up being a really big development, all right? Because look, depending on what happens, Trump may either end up losing the election and going to prison, okay, winning the election, dismissing the case and pardoning himself, okay, or the Supreme Court could say he's immune from prosecution, and, that would end this case, because you'd be like, well, immunity, I've got immunity. But again, if the case happens before the election, Butler said he's willing to publicly testify. Interesting. And if Donald Trump loses, as part of this testimony, loses the case and loses the election, because there are Republicans out there that say, look, if he gets convicted, we're done. All right, we're not going to vote for him. I'm not going to vote for a criminal. But some of them are waiting to see how this turns out. And so if his testimony leads to a conviction in the documents case, if this, again, if they're even able actually to get this done before the election happens, well, that would be significant. Look, it is very clear from what we've seen, the evidence that we've seen, now the testimony that we've seen, that Donald Trump was obstructing justice. He was trying to prevent the FBI and the government from taking documents that belong to them and not to Trump. And a lot of these, again, were classified materials, things that Donald Trump should not have had. Some of the other stuff that Butler has said is that where the documents were being kept, pretty much anybody could access them. So there was a gigantic security risk as well. And Butler had said on the election, hey, I just think we should, move on from Trump, okay, and not reelect the guy, and he also avoided answering whether or not he thought that Donald Trump was a national security risk, which I thought was pretty interesting. But there you go. I mean, look, Trump made the decision to have these documents moved because he knew the FBI was coming to get more of them. So, that's obstruction of justice right there, trying to obstruct the FBI from reclaiming these stolen documents, and also suggests that he may still yet have documents that have not been recovered yet. And that's the other thing, too. If he still, after all this time, possesses classified documents that he failed to return, and that he had this guy and others hide, that's even more damning. So this development here, this guy's testimony and him just coming forward with this, pretty damn significant and damning for Trump.